What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. And on today's show, I got a special guest on the show, someone that I really enjoy following on social media, big time. He knows his hoops, so we've been trying to get this together for a little bit, and I'm happy to finally have him on the show. I got Zachary Raymond of the Off the Glass podcast. Kind of similar to the Off the Ball podcast, and that's why I when I saw you on Twitter, I was like, oh, man, it's kind of similar. So
Yeah.
happy to have him on. So Zach, what's going on, my man?
Thanks for having me, Chris, man. Everything's all good. Beautiful weather here in Chicago. Another opportunity to talk hoops. A lot of exciting basketball going right now. Playoff time, draft. It's a lot going on, man. So thanks for having me, man. Definitely excited. Fan of you guys. Like I was saying off the air, love what you guys do on Periscope with the live discussions. A lot of great takes, a lot of great basketball being talked about. So definitely enjoy it. Thanks for having me on.
I really appreciate that, man. That means a lot coming from you. But you yourself, like I said, a big fan of yours. Love your show. I just listened to the show with Perk today, actually, and Zach had Kendrick Perkins on the show on his last show, and it was a great discussion they had. Really. So just talk to me about how you got started doing podcasting and just about your basketball background.
I got started podcasting thanks to my wife, as cheesy, as unexciting that may sound. But I remember I was watching the game and I was complaining like I always do, like, what are they talking about? They don't know this, they don't know that. And she was like, babe, you should just start a podcast. That's all you listen to. And I have been a fan of podcasting since like 2007, like early podcasting. And I'll tell you why when I get to my playing days. But from there, she told me to get started. I had no clue what I was doing. And because I played and I'm here, so, I'm from Chicago, I've met a lot of people, played a lot against a lot of guys. I was like, I'm just going to start this podcast and I'm going to get this guest and this. And it was like, nah, nobody returning emails, nobody responding. So
that's a part of it, man. That's the struggle, right?
It worked out because, to be honest with you, it allowed me to hone my craft, get comfortable doing it by myself. So to the point where whether I have a guest or not, I feel comfortable doing it. I'm able to line up my content. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what I was going to have. But the wife was like, once we got going, she's like, we're not just doing this for fun. Like, we're going to make this into a brand. We're going to make this into a business, trademark the name, all that kind of stuff. And, here we are starting from scratch 3 years ago. And now I was just looking today, I'm at 700 followers on Twitter, which I'm just super proud of because I literally started from zero. Like, I can only count maybe 5 people that I knew prior to the podcast. So this wasn't like a personal account I turned into my podcast account. So it's just, people now, especially the younger generation, how did you get started? And I was literally telling them, like, the simple answer you always hear, like, I just got started just doing it, making sure I had a decent mic, didn't break the bank. I mean, I upgraded now, but just a decent mic and watching a lot of YouTube videos, listening to how other people do it, and then literally just learning as we go and continue to network and don't take no for an answer. And here we are. I was able to do my second interview with Perk, and he's the type of guy that I could text. He'll give me pointers. He'll even call me out the blue sometimes, ask me stuff, just to really, it's like ESPN Perk, and then it's like another side of Perk. Like, and he's a really, really good guy, man, really humble guy, especially somebody of that stature. It's kind of refreshing. Like, he's just a really good dude. So I'm glad you enjoyed the interview. Last time we had him on, it was a little bit longer. We kind of talked about some other things, but to have him on and hear him just breaking down the game, man, I really enjoyed it myself. And I was really surprised that, like, he brought a lot of energy. But I say all that to say this: you just get started and you just never know. You get started, you have the passion,
exactly.
And you never know where you might be. And now, here we are, sweatshirts and all kinds of stuff now. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I got to get me a hoodie because I definitely like that hoodie a lot. So I got to get on that merch for you. But like you said, man, you just got to go at it in the podcast game. You just got to do it.
Just got to do it.
I went through the same thing. I'm like, man, do I even know if I want to do this? Like, are people going to care? Yeah. And you just got to, like, I just started, and support from the wifey, that's important because it makes everything easier, right?
Yeah. And when I started, we had just had our first child. Like, I got a 4 and 2-year-old. and I had a full-time job at the time. I was a law enforcement. I was in policing. So like people don't even realize, like sometimes I'll be at work creating content while I'm listening to the police scanner radio, but I'm recording a podcast because the finals was the night before, and just, the passion to be able to do this because, like I said, I had a playing career. I was really good at a young age, but things happened in life. Didn't play high school ball, but did end up playing Division I JUCO ball in Nebraska. So played against some really good guys. Academics, the story wasn't really my thing. So I ended up finishing up at a Division III. Benedictine University is outside of Chicago in a suburb called Lisle. Successful run while we was there, national tournament experience. Then from there, it was just pursuing the dream. ABA at the time, IBL, which doesn't exist anymore, PBL, which doesn't exist, but at the time it was probably the third best league in the country outside of the NBA and the D League at the time, and played in Rockford. And that's where I mentioned earlier, me and Daniel Artest played on the team. And quick story, he told me, man, he's like, do you realize that, because he met Fred VanVleet years later, that he was in our camp when he was a kid. And I was like, wow, you telling our age, DA, that's incredible. Like to see him now, like, of course, we obviously didn't know, but, played in Rockford, played in Halifax, Nova Scotia for the Raymond. They part of the Canadian League now. It was the PBL then. Then had a couple coffee in First Division Poland, great experience. And then I played 2 seasons back to back in the second league in Finland. And then after that, I kind of just was like, you know what? I know I'm good enough, but a lot of people don't realize, even with the NBA, man, so many great guys out here that could play basketball. And a lot of times, sometimes it's just really about opportunity. So at 30, I just decided to, retire from playing seriously. And again, doing the podcast kind of been refreshing to really get back in the game. Because once I retired, I was watching on TV, but I wasn't really into the game like that. Like now I'm kind of getting back into the high school scene and knowing some of the players and all that kind of stuff. So the podcast has kind of renewed my passion for basketball, just to be honest with you. I don't even really worry about playing anymore. I'd rather record a podcast or do some content than worried about going to play.
Yeah, and I knew once I started following you on Twitter and stuff, I knew, I was like, oh, he definitely hooped, because you don't just like talk about, like, you know the intricacies of basketball and the ins and out, and why this guy did this, why this guy did that. So I was like,
I was a point guard. I was a point guard too. Yeah, and a cerebral point guard. So passing was my thing. Like I could sit and break down like what Rondo or LeBron is doing, because sometimes even a John Moran or Trae Young, I'm seeing it while it's live, and I'm like, man, he's wide open. Oh, okay, he saw it. There's a dime dunk. Like, because I was that type of point guard. So, and then along with my background in college being history, I love research. So I don't like doing hot takes. It's just not my style. I know everybody kind of has their own thing, but for me, I'd rather have an idea, think it out, research it, make sure it lines up with what I'm seeing along with the eye test, and then put the content out. My mission statement was to bring a fresh perspective, thought-provoking, fresh, intelligent, thought-provoking perspective to the game of basketball. So that's what I try to do. Not talk over your head, but make it where it's almost like in layman's terms, but we're also putting some thought behind this. We're not going to just say random stuff like AD is better than Tim Duncan. We're not going to do that. Yeah, we're not going to do that. that kind of stuff. And I know that works for people, to each his own. But for me, I have to be the guy. I respect the game too much, so I have to be that guy. So that's why you see that in my takes, because again, that's the type of player I was.
Man, I'm so happy you brought that up, because that take was crazy.
Yes.
and listen, there's NBA Twitter, and for the most part, NBA Twitter is pretty good. But then you get the accounts I'm talking about, those crazy accounts that have spicy Porzingis or deceit, Levine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. They just put out, but people like certain people, younger people like those accounts, and when you see stuff like that, I think that's what that drives me crazy. When you just put out a take and then it's like, oh, just bait. Like AD saying he's Tim Duncan. Like I'm not saying he's not a good player, but you're just saying that because you haven't seen Tim Duncan play, and it just, when you see people those takes. I know for me, I my head.
I don't even partake in it anymore because whether you're trying to explain it or not, you're giving them extra clicks, and at the end of the day, that's all they want.
I fell for that because I was so.
I did initially. I did when I first was gun ho and I got to respond to everything. Now it's kind of like, all right, I'll see what this is. Yeah. But it's weird because again, I'll be 39 next month, and I remember having to watch Michael Jordan come fly with me on VHS or Spectacular Guards of the NBA with Isaiah Thomas and Fall in Love with Pete Maravich or Magic Johnson, always Showtime. And it's like, y'all have YouTube. So like you can go watch not just highlights, y'all can watch whole games.
Exactly.
That's the part nowadays that's weird to me, like how you can actually go watch Tim Duncan in his prime, KG in his prime, even Jordan in his prime with certain guys. And it's like, it's almost like they don't have this technology available to them with some of the takes they make. It's a very interesting dynamic to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just, I feel like, a lot of people just forget about, those players and stuff. And also another thing I don't like is, a lot of people like to just bring down guys, like when Giannis lost, it just like he went from being beloved, and then he loses. It's not just on him, obviously. It was a team effort why they lost. It was a bad matchup against Miami, and I think most people knew that this is going to be a tough series. This wasn't going to be the Bucks in 5 or 4. It was going to be a tough series, and you wouldn't be surprised if Miami came out because they had the guys to defend Giannis. But he loses, and then everyone's just getting on him like, oh, he's not that good. He's overrated. Blah blah blah. And then the MVP stuff happened. And he gets named MVP, which to me he deserved because it is a regular season award. And in the regular season, he was the best.
He had one of the best seasons of all time, all time. Like
exactly,
we can't even argue that. Yeah, and they had the best record prior to the stoppage. It is what it is.
Exactly. And I just see the people just get on him like, oh, he's not being humble because he had the newspaper of him in the airplane. It's like, first of all, you 2-time MVP, you could do whatever you want, right? He deserved that. And it just seems like in today's era, like whenever someone fails, people celebrate it. And I don't know about your take on that, but LeBron went through it. KD went through it when he got hurt last year. I mean, people are like, good, that's what he gets for joining the Warriors. And it's like, I'm celebrating. It just seems like, and it's honestly in all sports. I
think it was around all the time, maybe not this extreme. I just think now because of technology and the internet, everybody can voice their opinion. The fact that content is being consumed and created every minute. Yeah. So we can all offer these opinions. And nowadays too, everything's about picking a side. Like everything's about picking a side. I yell at perspective, but nobody has it anymore. And then also, I think people are jealous, and now they get to express that. I think a lot of people are intimidated by greatness. I think a lot of people want to be great, but don't want to put the work in. I did a whole podcast because of The Last Dance, and I called it the Jonah Complex. And the Jonah Complex is basically being afraid of your own greatness. Like it's a dope kind of concept, and how you'll do kind of anything to avoid your own greatness within yourself. And then you have a tendency to hate on other people who is great. So I was talking about Jordan because the response of everything went from how he was off the court to how he was a teammate. Like that had anything to do with how he was as a competitor or winning championships. Like we had to change into all this stuff. And I started looking at some of the takes, and it just made me think like, that's what's really going on here. I think a lot of people, and then the money they make and all that kind of stuff is like.
That's a big thing too.
That's the big thing. It's like, you couldn't put the work in, or you didn't win the genetic lottery and put the work in. So now I'm going to be jealous of their greatness instead of trying to figure out what am I great at? Like, what can I do? And then let me pursue that, because we all have something great that we should be doing. But I think sports is the easiest thing to do, and basketball is the easiest thing to do because it's the most easiest looking game to play.
It's the most accessible too.
It's the most accessible.
You can play by yourself. Like you don't need anyone. Like every other sport, like to play football, to be quarterback, you need a receiver, right?
Yeah, like baseball, they get criticized and all that too, but not like in basketball. Like not in basketball. And the fact that you can see them. There's no helmets, no baseball helmets, no, it's just it's a different type of dynamic. But I really think my my theory is lack of perspective, and then people just hating because they're afraid of their own greatness. Like me personally, I always say I root for greatness. Since I don't have a team to root for, when Brady and them was going undefeated and they lost in the Super Bowl, and I know the Giants fans was happy, but I was rooting for the Patriots because when you look back in history, you would have been like, man, that team is the second team to go undefeated. Look who was on that team. But that's the historian side of me, you know. So me personally, I always root for greatness. Always. Yeah.
I'm a Giants fan, so I was happy that they
it was a great game.
But you know what's crazy?
Giants, yeah.
I'm a big Tom Brady fan. Like I even have like I have the Funko Pop. I'm a big Mark. He's one of my favorite players. So like I said, I appreciate greatness. I appreciate the story of how he got there because it wasn't a conventional story. Like it wasn't like he was the number one pick and he was naturally gifted. He had to work. It took advantage of an opportunity. So that's why I loved about that story. I love
Chris. If we honest, Chris, that's real life stuff. It's just that
it's believable.
His greatness in football, but how many people that we don't know of that had to like really bust their butt to get where they are and are uber successful? I mean, the biggest example is the richest man in the world right now. I mean, you could agree or disagree, but Jeff Bezos, they laughed at Amazon at first. They laughed. He worked hard and here he is. So, I mean, I think that's why, you know, certain people, if you're honest, why you root for them is because you kind of like that story, you know, super relatable story, if we're honest.
Yeah, because that Tom Brady story, you think about it, that's like a blue collar, like the guy who didn't get the opportunity at Michigan. They want to replace him with the 5-star Drew Henson. And he kept winning and then doesn't get drafted to the 6th round. And then he's like the 6th on the depth chart his rookie year, doesn't play, almost got cut. And then he gets his opportunity and then never looks back. And then took Super Bowls and all these. But even with him, he had a Super Bowl against the Eagles. He has, 500 yards, 3 touchdowns. He has the one play where they get him, they sack him, he fumbles, and people are like, oh, well, he lost to a bad quarterback. It's like, dude, he threw for 500 yards. He did everything possible. One play where he had to force to, they need a touchdown or whatever. I think they need a field goal, whatever. They need to win. And, people are like, oh, he lost to a backup quarterback. It's like, no, he didn't lose to a backup. The defense.
That's right.
And I brought this up, too. I brought it up with Dirk. Because when Dirk wins the MVP in, 2007?
They lost to the
Warriors team. Yeah. They lose to the Warriors in 6. Imagine Twitter back then. They would have eviscerated this man. Eviscerated Dirk because we saw the sad when they gave him the trophy. And usually they used to give it before the playoff game and all that. And he got at a press conference and it's like I'm sure he didn't really care because they just lost to and they had to end the season, right? They won 7 games,
something like that.
So and then a couple years later he wins a championship and and then people all celebrate him now. So it's just crazy how it works like that.
It's weird. It's super weird. It is. I agree. Yeah,
I just don't like when people trash on. Let's wait with Giannis' career is over before we want to see if he's ever going to win a championship because like I said, we did it with Dirk. We've done it with so many guys. Let's wait and see before we just say, oh, Giannis is never going to win a chip or whatever or this. Because we could come back next year and the Bucks are the world champions, right?
Yeah, I mean, but then at the same time, I was on the Giannis thing all year. But I also had perspective. If LeBron would have won it, I mean, you could make a case either way. I didn't agree with it, but just like I was posing last night, we watched AD put on a show. How does AD finish 6th in MVP voting? And you could argue that he was the best player on his team throughout the whole season, and then especially last night. So, again, it's all in applying perspective. We can critique. Like I said, Giannis need to kind of add a couple things to his bag. Nothing crazy. And I even said it because I watched the progression. I said it last year. He was 2 years ahead of schedule. I said that last year. So now this year it's like he was a year ahead of schedule. Now he's going to be motivated more than ever. And it's like, how you think somebody that's constantly – because his story is crazy within itself. Granted, he hit the genetic lottery, but the work ethic, what he put in to get to where he was, if you think he's not going to know that he played bad and that he's not going to come back trying to improve, you must you don't get it. I just think you don't get it. So yeah, I agree 100%. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I mean, we all know he's going to come back strong. He's going to use this as motivation. And he listen, last year when he won MVP, I was like, he could get better, and that's scary. And then he came back this year, he got better. Yep. And what's scary is that he can still get better. So if you don't think he's going to come out and bust his ass and get in the gym and work on his shooting and expand his game, you're crazy if you don't think he's going to be doing that. So,
and he has the best attribute for this era in particular. He's uber super aggressive. Mm-hmm. And in this era, in society, we don't really promote that like we used to anymore. We don't. I'm not saying it's wrong or right, because certain things have improved and need to improve. But that aggressive nature, like I had to think about it when I was talking about, I was like, he reminds me a lot of like Moses Malone, where his best attribute was his motor and aggression. Mm-hmm. And for me, as I get older, I really love guys that are super aggressive, that work hard, because 9 times out of 10, those guys, those type of players are going to be successful. So when you see somebody like that in a Giannis, who literally you could probably name 5 or 6 other players in the NBA, you might not say better, or you might say better, but if we just honest talking about skill-wise, you could come up with 6 guys that you would pick before him. But you can't deny how hard he plays and his aggression, which allows him to put up the numbers he puts up. Mm-hmm. So all that matters, all that matters. But he's I said it's super unique or fascinating, because I think if you name 7 guys, I might take 7 guys before I take him to start a team, just being real. Yeah, but that's not hating on his greatness. That's just looking at the game and just being honest about the game. But Chris, definitely his best attribute is his aggression. It really is.
Yeah. I think people get confused with the MVP and think it's the best player award, and it's not the same. Like, because we saw Russell Westbrook win the MVP, and we wouldn't say he's the best player in the league, but that year they thought he was the best player because of his stats, right? He first triple-double since Oscar Robertson, right? Yep. So I think maybe the NBA needs to do a better job of probably seeing the difference, and because I think people getting confused with the MVP and the best player. We just gotta, maybe they should add. I've been a proponent of adding an offensive player of the year award. You're
not the first person that said that. Another friend of mine in the podcasting world, Max Van Ogden, the MVP, he said the same thing when we had a conversation about that. And even my other good friend, Rashad Phillips, he said 2 months ago, we need to have some type of criteria. I mean, you had a major media person admit to they prefer narratives. So that's why they voted for LeBron. Like, they admitted to that. So and I'm not saying that's everybody across the board, but I like to think there's probably a few more people that kind of shared that same thinking. And as much as the narrative sounds great, at the end of the day, guys put in too much work. Like, forget just paying the bills and we making $1 million. Like, guys literally in the gym putting in work to try to be the best they can be for you to say you're voting over them because the storyline sounds better. Like, I think
that's what the fascination with LeBron was the storyline.
And I said that. I laid it out. I said, let's just be honest. It's not no hate on LeBron. I'll tell LeBron this to his face. 35 years old, year 17. I just tweeted out, in a Facebook post, I looked it up. Chris, he's at almost 60,000 minutes if you add up playoffs and regular season. He's at almost, that's not even including the Olympics. He's at almost 60,000 minutes, bro. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying, if the main reason is because he's in year 17, he's 35, and then you have a guy who's younger putting up insane numbers, if we was to put the shoe on the other foot and flip-flop, you wouldn't even be having this argument. It would be LeBron James wins the MVP in a landslide. So
unanimous.
So I was like, let's just keep it consistent. You're if that's the main reason why, then no, we can't say. Now, that doesn't mean he wasn't an MVP candidate, but that can't be the main reason why, So a lot of that, to me, even though I agree with LeBron, a lot of people was criticizing him, saying he was hating on Giannis. I was like, no, you didn't listen to the interview. He made some very valid points. He's saying, if Marc Gasol wins the award for Defensive Player of the Year, he can't finish second team all defense.
Yeah. That happened with Tyson Chandler, too. Chandler with the Knicks
Yeah.
was a defensive player of the year, but I believe he was second team and didn't make the All-Star team. So it's weird
So,
with the voting.
and I think that's the other thing. Even with LeBron, we like to criticize just to criticize. And it's like, did you listen to the interview? Like what he said actually made sense. He wasn't referencing Giannis. He was just saying that sometimes the criteria seems to be a little skewed and a little blurred. So I know they have to. And I don't think it's necessarily the players need to vote because the players did used to vote all the way up. I think I looked up like 82, 83-ish. The players actually used to vote. So that's when you will see Bill Russell winning MVPs over Will Chamberlain, for example. But it has to be some kind of criteria because what social media, what the internet age has done is now everything is about ratings. So whether you agree with somebody, you get ratings. Whether you disagree with somebody, you get ratings. So I'm not saying these people are necessarily doing that on purpose, but it's a different factor that goes into when we're voting for these awards because of how we consume sports is different now. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, we have to kind of change with the times and maybe come up with some kind of hard-written criteria or maybe a balanced scoring sheet where maybe narrative does matter, but we're not weighing it more than points, rebounds, assists, or whatever else you want to put on that sheet or whatever.
Yeah, and also like when Westbrook won it, it feels like I feel like he won the award because it's the first time we saw someone with a triple double because he did it 2 years after. He did it 3 years in a row, and the voters didn't care about the year two. He did the same thing year two and the year three of the triple double, and nobody cared. They didn't care about that. So it's just weird, like especially with that him winning MVP. They finished. I think they were a 6th seed. But they gave it like around there, and it seemed they gave it to him because it's the first time we've seen a triple double. We got to give it to him. But then he does it again. It's like okay.
I mean, and even to be fair to Giannis, I felt like last year I wrote a blog post about how last year could have been the first MVP and defensive player of the year last year, and he did it this year. Mm-hmm. But to me, I thought last year we fell in love with the Giannis narrative, so he actually benefited from it last year because I'm like, if James Harden won it the year before and he's gotten better, how does he not win? Like, so I was one of those people where I didn't necessarily know how I would have voted. I'm glad I didn't have a vote last year. I probably would have leaned more towards Harden, push came to shove, even though I wrote the piece about Giannis, but it was close. And I was just one of those people that said, well, if Harden is better than last season, how does he not get it this season? So, Giannis benefited from it as well. It goes both ways. And I think he would even say that if he was honest, if we gave him some true serve, like not saying he's not going to say I didn't have an MVP season, but the storyline of the Bucks coming from nowhere, this kid getting drafted from Greece and unheard of, like all that kind of was swept up into that award last year. It really was.
Yeah, for sure. The story helped him too in a way.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. So it just, it's crazy, the MVP. Like I said, maybe they should fix it out and just reword, like have like a sort of a criteria so we know, because it feels like every year is it the best player? Is it the best stats? So I hope they could fix that up because the MVP is important.
It is.
It's important. It helps legacies. Like, James Harden could easily say he could be a 3-4-time MVP at this point. And he's only got one right now. He's, it's
even my favorite player of all time, Jordan.
He's probably
imagine he has 5, right? So if he gets the one that Barkley wins and then the one that Malone, he has 7. Yeah. Like, so then at that point, how do we really debate this LeBron Jordan thing if he has 7 MVPs, 6 championships, and 6 finals MVPs? Mm-hmm. Who knows? One could say the same thing for LeBron.
LeBron probably should have like at least 5. Probably.
At least 5. The Derrick Rose one I've kind of been debunking because people forget that the Bulls had the best record. Noah missed a lot of that season. Boozer missed a lot of that season. And Dang even missed time at different points. And they beat Miami in the regular season. And again, it's a regular season award. So I've been kind of debunking that one, even though LeBron was obviously the best player in the league. You could say him or Kobe back then, but I would say LeBron was probably the best player.
Kobe's another one.
Kobe's another one. Shaq has 1.
They had 2 MVPs, and Nash has 2 by himself.
Yeah, so again, we have to, now that we're media, we have to, and my goal one day is to get to that level where I can obviously vote, but we have to figure this out. We really do.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like once I've gotten to the podcast world and it's blown up my podcasts and stuff. It just changes the way I look at the game and just how I talk about the game. Like I'm not talking as a fan. Like I'm a fan, obviously, but you try to look at it as a different. Like I'm not here to criticize players overly. Like the Plumlee thing. Like I didn't get on him. I'm like, you messed up. But try not to criticize too much, especially once you try to be professional as far with.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. Being professional, I think we're here to critique the game. Let's not get it twisted, but at the same time, I'm not taking shots at people either unnecessarily. No, like if he blew the play, and I'm pretty sure when they look at film, they're gonna ask him, and they got their own principles. And even when I say certain things, I'll preface it by saying, I'm not at practice. I wasn't in the film.
In the huddle, you weren't in the huddle.
Yeah, all that stuff fans don't realize really matter. And then the fact that I've played, right, and I've been around certain guys, played against NBA players and overseas guys, I have a certain respect, and there's a certain code and a certain understanding that what goes into a game and a decision sometimes, and I don't think a lot of, your casual fan who hasn't played, and I was fortunate enough to play at higher levels, are even understanding what they're even watching sometimes. So you got, as I think those of us who have that experience, who can articulate well, I think it's up to us to kind of pull the veil back, so to speak, and say, well, before we go too crazy, I want to preface it by saying, did you see this, and this is their scheme, and that's why because all that stuff, whether people want to call them excuses or not, I mean, it does matter. It does matter. So
it does, yeah, for sure. But let's talk about these playoffs, because
let's do it.
It's been crazy, right? Obviously the pandemic it changed the whole basketball world. So much time off, but the bubble happened, and I was really skeptical because just with all the high numbers in the world, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know, and it's worked.
Yeah.
No positive tests. So, obviously we had a few guys, Daniel House,
you just completely, I will go down to my grave saying he completely ruined. To me, I'm not going to even say small ball for them was a failure, because to be honest with you, if we use perspective, Westbrook gets COVID. So he arrives late, no training camp. And then those of us who were using perspective again, the biggest thing I heard was the soft tissue injuries, rolled ankles, pulled hamstrings, because they've been off. Now they got to ramp their bodies back up. And what does he suffer? Soft tissue injury in his quad. He's already declining a little bit athletically, and that's his gift. He's not the best, we know, when it comes to maybe a slow down decision type game. So then you have that. And then you have your 6-man, 15 points a game, 6-man, another body that can guard LeBron James, decide to go and do whatever he decided to do. And to me,
that killed everything for them.
You could tell by their energy. I'm not excusing it, because at the end of the day, you're still a professional, but we looking at it on both sides. That completely ruined the energy of that team. Like, that completely killed them. And I really believe that's why I said you got to take advantage of opportunities, man, because if they would have won game 2, who knows how it would have turned out, because they easily should have won game 2 if we go back and watch that game. You lose game 2, House does whatever he does, and then that was it. That was it for the Rockets. So now they got to go into the offseason scratching. But the playoffs have been, the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference Finals has been great up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, the House thing, I mean, if I'm his teammate, yeah, he definitely got a nice, talk in the locker.
Yeah. Like, we might have fought. Just keeping it a buck. We might have fought, for real. Seriously. Because literally, it was that serious, bro. Like, it was that serious, bro.
It's just great. Like, why would you, like, it's just why? We're in the playoffs, guys. We have an opportunity to try to win a championship, right? That's why you're here, right? To win a championship. And you could have possibly, risk giving other guys. It was selfish. It's borderline.
And I heard people saying, well, the NBA is this and they strict. And even with the Lou Williams thing, and my whole thing was and this how I am with life with certain things. I don't necessarily always agree with every rule, every law. But if you know those are the rules of engagement, and you choose to right. Remember, you choose to participate, then you have to follow that. Otherwise, they were letting them out. They didn't even have to give legitimate reasons to go to the bubble this year. So if you was like, you know what, I'm gonna need my wife, or I got this going on, I ain't going, then don't go like that. And so I didn't really buy into that either, because people were saying certain things. Even some, like when the Lou Williams things happened, it was kind of flabbergasting for me to sit back kind of watch even some of the stuff he was saying. I'm like, but y'all knew the rules. And at the end of the day, you volunteered and signed up for that. So, but hey, Lakers move on, and now they look like they're poised to get that next banner, to be honest with you.
Yeah, man. What's been the biggest surprise to you, both bad and good, so far in this bubble? Who's been the most disappointing? What's the most disappointing thing you've seen, and what's the most surprising thing you've seen so far in the bubble?
That's a really good question. We covered one, Houston, because I really thought the fact that they were rested had a legit chance to kind of cause some things with those lineups. Disappointing. That gotta be the Clippers. You know, I picked them to come out the West.
Yeah, man, me too. I had them winning it all. I had them winning it all.
I had them winning it all. I did. I had them winning it all. And I said I was right and wrong. And the reason why I said I was right, I didn't like the moves they made mid-season. I said it then because they were already having chemistry issues. Then you bring in two new guys. And then I'm one of those people, again, you got to value your role players. And you're a Knicks fan. Like, Mo Harkless, is he an all-star? No, but he's been great as a wing defender, which this league is all about. And he can make open big-time shots. Even in Portland, he can go 0 for 13. And then in the fourth quarter, and Dame kicks it to the corner, and he's making a three. Like, he's a really good pro. And they could have used, obviously, another wing defender. They needed some defense. So I totally over thought that on that. I think for me, what I was been the other shock, and I didn't take it into account, was how good the youth would do. And I mean, we're seeing the experience kind of playing out as we move into later rounds, but I think the young legs, I didn't take that into account with these short turnarounds, have really had a positive impact.
Jamal Murray, man. Jamal, I mean, he took his game to another level.
Well, he finally lived up to what we thought he should have been.
Yeah, I was talking about him major before the bubble. He was one of those guys where I'm like, and I did like a top guys on the 25 list, and I had him outside of it because I'm like, he hasn't lived to that. He hasn't lived up to that. Like, he's been a good player, but he hasn't taken that next step. And I don't know if I'm going to see it, or I didn't know if he was going to get to that gear. And then little did he know, he got into the bubble and he's having battles with Donovan Mitchell, and they're going at it 50-point games. And then he's carrying his team, him and Jokic, and beating a Clippers team who a lot of people predicted were going to be in the final, play the Lakers. So he took his game and literally he took it like 2 steps, not just one. He took it to like where he's considered,
he has all NBA talent. I said that even, but the issue has always been consistency. So for me, the talent has always been there, but those are really my only surprises. Everything else, to be honest with you, I kind of knew the bubble was going to work because I knew the amount of money the NBA was going to spend. I knew what was at stake because, again, during this whole pandemic, I think people don't understand what's really at stake. Like, if you really want to shut everything down, I'm with it. I'm all about sacrifice.
They rip up the CBA and all that.
And all that. Then people don't understand money does matter. And it's not so much about just paying the players. It's the amount of jobs that bubble creates. That's why college football had to come back. Like, people don't understand. You will have universities already being bankrupt, but even more. Like, sports and everything drives this economy. This is a service-based economy. So if you're not applying any services, and last time I checked, the government ain't cutting no new stimulus checks, and some people didn't even get the first stimulus check. So at some point, you have to understand, where does health versus livelihood meet up, and the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So, you had I forget what media person tweeted out that one of the shuttle bus drivers said he wanted to write Adam Silver a letter down in the bubble because he was out of work for months. Like, them bringing the bubble, now he can drive the shuttle just from wherever they are to the games, was giving him a job. And that's a shuttle, let alone all the people who are responsible for the food, I saw the report about the Amazon packages, how they cleaning the people they brought in, the testers. So, again, my word is perspective with all this kind of stuff, So for me, that was my only surprise was the youth thing. I knew the bubble buying some crazy catastrophe, long as everybody followed the rules, because the TBT, the other tournament, set the stage. And when I saw what they did and I saw it was successful, I said,
and
okay.
the NBA did the same exact thing as far as the presentation. It's the same thing.
Yep. Same thing. I said, I know they got they notepad out there watching this. I wouldn't be surprised because it's the NBA. They picked up the phone and called the folks from the TBT. They ain't like they not going to answer the phone. It's the NBA. And okay, that's what you guys are doing. Oh, how does that work? And then when I saw that was successful, I said, no, they're going to be fine as long as nobody does anything crazy. And as soon as they do, what do? Nope, you're going into quarantine, or nope, you're going home. That's it. You're done.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and it's like I said, I was skeptical at first just because, maybe because I'm in New York City and stuff's been crazy over here.
Yeah.
So maybe that was my skepticism about it. But like you said, man, everything has gone as smooth as possible. Yeah, obviously we got a few guys who have Lou Williams and Daniel House. They had this situation, but for the most part, that's been great. So that's the most important thing, is that everyone's healthy, and that was my biggest, is health. If you're telling me everything you're going to do and it's going to be, and it's going to, if everyone follows the rules,
we're
not going to see no crazy outbreaks, then I'm cool. I was with it.
Yep.
And they have done it, and I'm kudos to the NBA and Adam Silver for handling it and giving us, a great product. Because like I said, the playoffs it's been crazy too. We've seen some wild games, like you said, some breakout, Donovan Mitchell going crazy, Jamal Murray, Jokic has been crazy, so it's been fun so far. So I want to get into last night's game.
Okay.
And that late, and we talked about it before, we got on air, but obviously just a crazy game between Denver and LA. And obviously AD comes up with the big 3-pointer to win the game. Let's talk about that play, because for me, I literally have probably watched this play from the minute I woke up today to go to work at 7 o'clock. I watched it, and at first I'm like, oh man, Plumlee, damn. And then I'm like, all right, maybe Plumlee and they just said switch on everything. So Plumlee assumed LeBron was going to pick him, and he just had in his head that he was going to pick him. And before even realizing he wasn't getting picked, and then told Grant too late, and then Grant couldn't see. I'm like, that has to be why he did that, because there's literally no other reason why he would do that. So in my head, I'm like, oh, that has to be the reason. And then I watched it again. I'm like, I think he just had a lapse. He just didn't have a lapse. So just talk to me about that play and just break it down a little bit for me, because it's one of the play. It's along with the OG play from the series of 4 between Toronto and Boston, which is kind of similar. And like the breakdown on defense, and that play I still think about that play. I just hate bad defensive and bad plays and all that. Being someone defensive player and always, especially in football too, playing defensive football in high school, I'm always big on defense and making sure communication is key. So just talk about that play, and what do you think happened?
Well, a couple things, because it's interesting. The OG Boston play, that came out of a timeout. Mm-hmm. And that was an example of Nick Nurse knowing Brad Stevenson's tendency to want to go zone out of bounds plays. And Boston came out in zone. And then you had Tatum communicate that OG went through. But then Jalen, because of the action between Gasol and Siakam, they didn't talk. And then Lowry, tackle fall, he didn't have to jump up and down. I agree with Barkley. I don't agree with him often, but he was right. Him jumping up and down gave him the lane. If he stands there,
you have a better ways to pass. It's easier to pass, actually.
But in the Denver situation, if we remember, Murray blocks the shot out of bounds. Right? So it's not a set play per se. That's the Lakers running one of their normal out of bounds plays. Or I'll say this, maybe a play that they worked on in practice for that situation, right? Because there were times when I played in college, we'll put the clock on 5 seconds. Okay, we got this play we're going to run from full court under these baskets. So could have been one of that situation. But what I went back and looked at, Denver had a timeout. And Mike Malone should have used that timeout to get his defense set. That's what I would have done. Now, hindsight is obviously 2020, but that's what I did. And as far as the play, like I told you off air, I saw it live. Initially, though, I thought LeBron was going to set the pick and then slip to the basket. And I was like, they're going to get a layup. But when I saw AD come sprinting off and I saw Plumlee for no reason yell out a switch, I knew as soon as Rondo put the pass right on the money, right in the shooting pocket, he catches it off the hop, knocks it down. And like I told you, only time you're switching in a situation like that, or even playing a switching defense, is if you're actually physically getting screened. And then
that's why I think it was just Plumlee assuming that LeBron was going to come down for a screen, because it just doesn't make sense.
No, I don't even think he assumed that part. I think he just assumed for whatever reason, I'm going to yell out switch and he's going to switch. And
but
then
you couldn't even see because LeBron is just standing still.
Yeah,
so
and then
can't see that AD.
No, Grant didn't even know AD got the ball until AD was already in his shot. So I guess you could say Grant, because my coach would say this, you can't be weak side. My junior college would say this, hugging up on your man. Like, you got to be man, you ball. So, yeah, Grant needs to be off his man, kind of see what's going on so he could be able to react. But in that situation, all Plumlee had to do was lock and trail. So if he's locking and trailing, even if LeBron does pick him, you want to be close anyway as defenders to prevent the slip to the basket. When you see the slip is when you start cheating as a defender and you switch early. So either way it goes, Plumlee should be right there in Anthony Davis's hip pocket. If he's in his hip pocket, long as he doesn't foul him, Davis has to do something amazing to even get that shot off.
And you can live with that if he makes a crazy shot off you.
Yeah, you can live with that.
On him. You can live with that.
For somebody that played at Duke for Coach K, NBA player, like, it was kind of head scratching. And like I told you off air, my good buddy Daniel Artest, check out his podcast as well.
Yeah, it's a good show. Yeah.
He posted the Instagram clip. Plumlee did the same thing against the Lakers when Kuzma got the shot during the play-in game. So, and that one looks, if you go back and watch that, if you haven't seen it, ladies and gentlemen, that one's actually even worse than last night's, because no pick was made, nothing at all. He just yelled out a switch for no reason on that play. So I'm pretty sure they're going to talk to Plumlee about it, because in this time of year, and you know this, Chris, you watch enough basketball, you only get so many opportunities. And Denver, for them to show that kind of character, because I thought the Lakers, LeBron came out looking strong. For them to battle back, you got great minutes from Dozier, even though he missed those key free throws down the stretch. Everybody was criticizing Jokic. He was huge. Everybody was criticizing Jokic. He stepped up. I wrote it down. He had 12 points in the fourth quarter. Him and AD was going back and forth, scoring on each other. And for you to be in position to go 1-1, I'm not saying the Lakers necessarily sweep them, but now it becomes a math game. I don't think the Nuggets can beat them 4 times. I don't think they can beat them 4 times.
They're not going to have the magic they had the first 2 rounds for sure. I don't see that happening again. I don't think they'll have 3 times not a charm. I don't think in this case. They needed that. And
the Lakers had the good veterans, because even if we go back before the 80 shot, the Clippers the Nuggets get their first.
The Clippers should be here.
Yeah, I know. It's Freudian slip, right? We should have the LA series right now. But if it wasn't their first lead, it was one of those leads in the fourth quarter. And then Danny Green hits a 3 on the wing. And then they come back down. Rondo hits another 3, which was his only basket.
Rondo has been surprising. He's been really good.
Unbelievable. He hasn't been surprising to me. Rondo has. To me, he got a bad rap because of Chicago and Dallas and then some other off-the-court stuff.
I think, but just so much the injuries this year, not playing so much. I think that's what surprised that, he's back to being playoff Rondo, which we saw at New Orleans was great. Obviously, Boston and all that has been.
But for me, I always look at the type of injuries, right? We're not talking ligament tears. No, we're talking about freak injuries. So, like, he broke his thumb. So for me, like, I'm not surprised. He's very smart, cerebral.
So smart.
He just has to get a little bit of a rhythm. But that's an example, though, of not taking advantage of opportunities and how the Lakers have enough guys that can answer. Because during that run, Denver had the momentum, and then the Lakers each time last night, like a eventual possible championship team does, they had to answer. So now, again, Denver's going to look back at when this season is over and next year kick themselves, because, again, you have to capitalize on them opportunities. You don't know what the future holds. You just don't.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Denver. But Denver has been just tremendous in this playoffs as overall. But it's a game they're gonna look back if they don't win this series or make this series. They're gonna look back and be like, damn, that was that might be the difference in this series. So
because LeBron had 2 points. I'm looking at it, 2 points in the fourth quarter in 10 minutes. He played most of the fourth. He had in my opinion, he had a father time game. We can make all the kind of excuses, but if we're not being fans and just being honest, it's not me hating. You could just tell he did not have that push in the second. It just wasn't there. And smartly, like a smart player does, he leaned on AD. He did.
Yeah. And it's funny, people still criticize LeBron James because I don't know if you saw it, but Skip Bayless had a tweet this morning, and I guess right before they went on air, they're like, "We're gonna Chris Broussard's gonna be on the show. We're gonna talk why LeBron stood there." That's the tweet, and I was just like, "Oh, come on, Skip!" Like LeBron makes a play where he's not thinking about. He's making the right play. He's letting this is for AD. And you're going to criticize LeBron. But you know how it is.
But again, that's an example of where we are in media, and then Skip not understanding that they were running an out-of-bounds play.
Exactly.
So where did you want him taking it out? Did you want him coming off? No, they were running a certain out-of-bounds play. But, he has a job to do, so I get it.
That's why he gets paid $10 million a year to do it. Cash on LeBron James, man. That's a good gig to have.
Yeah,
but,
I guess.
Let's go to the other conference.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about Miami and Boston. This series is fun. This is a fun series. I did pick Miami to beat Milwaukee. I didn't think they would do it in 5, but
right.
But Miami, that defense they play, they play some great defense, and Boston too. So how do you feel about this series? And obviously, Miami was up 2-0. Boston came back and they needed to win Game 3. They came up big and win Game 3. And so how do you feel about the series, and what do you think the outlook of the series is? Who do you think's going to take the series?
I said coming in, it was a coin flip series, so I picked Boston in 7. I think for them, the mentality changed. Perk said it on the podcast about he felt like they were playing a little too cute, a little too sassy with the step backs.
Yeah. Jason Tatum too. Yeah, Jason Tatum. Too many of that.
Too much of that, and they came out attacking the basket. And when people say attacking the basket, it was a certain type of way. It wasn't a lot of moves. It was, I'm getting the ball, whichever way you're going, I'm going opposite. I'm putting my head down. I'm getting to the rim. You saw that from Walker early. You saw it from Smart. Brown was super aggressive. And I think that set the stage for Miami, how they were going to adjust. Because one thing about a zone defense, it wants to slow you down. It wants you to make extra passes and use clock. So against a zone, you have to attack the gaps, but more importantly, you have to be decisive in your decisions. You can't be out there lollygagging, playing the ball, because what that means is when you caught the ball, now they get to rotate, and now the longer you're holding it in the zone and doing whatever you're doing, now they can load up and reset. You want to keep them moving and catch them in between rotations, and that's what Boston did. And then, Haywood, not a big stat game, 6, 5, and 4 in 30 minutes.
His defense, he was big. That was big.
Defense, his presence, the fact that somebody, I forget, I got to write this stuff down because I don't want to make it seem like I'm stealing their stuff, but somebody said how it's a big difference when your extra pass is Haywood and not Sammy Ojale or Grant Williams.
I know you're talking about.
Somebody posted that, and that was so true, because he gets paid $32 million for a reason, regardless of the injury, and maybe he's not how he used to be, but he's one of the most smart players. He had a great pick and roll in the first half when he made a nice pass. He got a dunk. So they really, really missed that. And then they almost kind of gave it away at the end because they kind of fell asleep. And then for Miami,
that's what they got to figure, because they did it again.
Yeah,
they did it like the first two. They got to figure out that late game, because it could cost them a game that they need, especially game 4. They got to tie this thing up. They can't play like that in late game stretches, because they let Miami come back in a game where they shouldn't have been back in that game.
And I think Jimmy has to get back to asserting himself a little bit. I think the fact that he loves this team so much, he loves the camaraderie, he loves the fact that he has guys with his same mentality. I think he's kind of being a little bit too unselfish at points. So I think he needs to get back, because he only had, 14 shots. And then Dragic, great player, but this is why I always say there's levels to this. I feel like he was due, which is okay, to kind of have an off night. He was 2 for 10, minus 29 for 11 points.
Yeah,
so I know a lot of people debate whether plus minus is for me, I look at the game. And if I feel like you had a bad game, and then I can go look and you're minus 29. And to me, he sets everything up for them. I've been saying this, their offense, when he's in the paint on the pick and roll, playing downhill, making shots, Miami's a completely different team because now you have to help on the drive, which opens up Robinson. Crowder struggled. He was 2 for 10 from the field. And it was
all threes. And he only had 2
all. Robinson struggled. Shout out to I was high on this young man, Tyler Hero. Is playing fantastic.
He's so good, man.
And it's going to be interesting now because I said this. Even if Miami, let's say they pull it off, they win the chip, they're in the catbird seat because you could actually, do you package Hero, Nunn, and somebody else to get that really big Uber star? I mean, and it shows you how certain organizations just do a great job with certain things with their culture. So, as far as this series goes, I just really believe it's a coin flip and it's also a coach's series. So now it's Spo's turn to make the adjustment because he was coaching circles around Stevens with the zone. Now you're going to have to kind of switch your looks up, switch some things up. But again, Dragic has to play better. And then you need Butler, I feel like, to be a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, for sure. He only took 13 shots, Butler. He's definitely got to get a little bit more. But also Tyler Hero's hitting some big-time shots for them. So that's great. But, Spo has made some good adjustments. Hopefully we'll see what he does for game 4. But as much as fun as is the matchup on the court, Tatum versus Butler, Adebayo versus, Jaylen Brown, to me, Stevens versus Spoelstra, matchup of, because these are we're talking about 2 of the elite coaches in the league going at, and Spo has been a great coach for a long time.
Oh, right? Yeah. I'm glad he's finally getting his flowers because the whole LeBron, Wade, Bosh thing, at the end of the day, you don't win championships with bums at the end of the day. And you need a great coach to kind of lead that. Because I always give the example, Dale Harris coached the Lakers the year before Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson got the same team.
He gets the same rap. Like it's the same thing with Phil Jackson. Like people don't give him enough credit because he's
they don't understand that.
And Jordan and Pippen, like he's changed the culture for both those teams. Both those teams were like people like, oh, can Jordan do it? Can Kobe and Shaq coexist? They got swept, And then Phil Jackson comes in and he knows how to work with stars. So
and then he builds a great staff. People just don't understand that the NBA, these guys are so great. I say this only at high school level, depending on where you play at, could you possibly have like one all-time great player and win a state championship. College, you usually need some guys, and in the NBA, you're going to need some guys. And if we look through history, there's only really a handful of teams. Isaiah's Bad Boys, he's the only guy in that era that didn't have a 50 greatest player on that roster during that time. And he leaves that era with he beat Magic, Bird, and Jordan. He had the best record. And then you fast forward to the Chauncey Billups, Ben Wallace, and those guys. But other than that,
Patrick Ewing goes almost there, man.
But other than that,
Patrick Ewing was almost there, man.
And Patrick was great for you guys. I think he gets a little bit of unfair criticism because
he didn't win a champ. Because he didn't win a champ.
But if you look at that roster, I mean, again, like I said, if we're really being honest and whatever your agenda is or how you feel, we look at the landscape and the history of the game. You need, by and large, all the champions had uber great players, unless you're looking at like Seattle, and I'm going way back with Dennis Johnson and Jack Sigma and those guys. But even the team they beat before that, Baltimore had Elvin Hayes as a guy that don't get talked about, all-time great, Bobby Dandridge. So, again, if you look at the history of the game, you need great players to win championships. Simple and plain. Simple and plain. Yep.
It really is that simple. And then you add a great coaching and you just asking for going great. And what I love about Miami is that they stuck with Spoelstra because, there was rumors during the, when the Heatles happened with Bosh, Wade, and LeBron, that LeBron wanted Pat to coach. He wants the great coach to coach him. And Pat Riley was like, no, Spo's the guy. This is just
trust me. If you trust me, he's the guy. And like, again, Pat Riley and again, Spo is one of those guys started out in the video room, and a lot of those guys do well, and people don't understand why. It's because you're sitting there watching tape, and if you're somebody that knows how to communicate, because that's the part I think Doc is great at, but the X and O's might not be the best, but he's great at communication, leadership of egos, and all that. But if you can communicate, and then you can go and watch film. I mean, it's a recipe for success when you're a coach. It really is. And that's Spo's background. And Pat Riley knew what he had. You know, certain people just, again, they just get it. They know what they are. They know how to lead. They know how to run an organization. You know, Pat had y'all Knicks running. You know, he leaves LA, comes over there. Then he goes down to Miami. And people don't remember, like, Miami wasn't that culture like that. And then next thing you know, he has them competing against the Bulls of those late 90s teams. So when Pat Riley says something, you got to listen to Pat. You got to listen to Pat.
He's tremendous. I mean, the fact that he's, you know, like you said, Miami wasn't Miami before he was there. They were not Miami. And he goes there, you know, gets Alonzo Mourning, Tim Hardaway, you know, PJ Brown.
You could argue New York. You're a Knicks fan. You could argue the Knicks
attitude. Bring an
Yeah.
attitude to, like, you see those Knicks teams and you just knew you were going to be in for a fight. Like, we have Patrick Ewing, we have our star, and then we got a whole bunch of good role players that are just going to know. They know their roles. Everyone knows, and that's another. We talked about that, knowing your role on the court. Everyone knows their role. They know Pat's going to be the guy that has to score 25, get his rebounds. But if everyone else plays your role right, we're going to do good things. And he brought that attitude to New York. One game away from an NBA championship. You know,
he needed one more guy. Because Akeem had one more guy. And usually that one more guy was the sum of the team. So in that game, Sam Cassell had a good game in that series. Ori made some shots. Kenny Smith, Vernon Maxwell. So each guy was able to kind of play that one more person role. But that's the only difference between Pat and Olajuwon, is that Olajuwon had one more guy in those key games step up. And then unfortunately, John Starks picked to have one that, you know, and I'm pretty sure he's a competitor. I know it probably still eats at him, but again, because I know recently there's been a lot of revisionist history about how we feel about Pat, and Pat just, you know, he needed one more guy. I went back and looked at his numbers, like all the way up till he was way past his prime. He was still averaging 20 and 10 with like 2 blocks. So he needed one more guy. You know, just, it's a shame that the year they went as an 8th seed, if you could have took a couple of those guys, like, moving back like 94, like in that range. If he had like a Latrell then,
even a Latrell. I think if they even had a Latrell Sprewell or an Allen Houston,
just one more guy,
another scorer to help him.
Yep.
I think they would have got over top.
It changes everything, but it is what it is.
It is what it is, man. You know, it's still sad that, you know, we don't have championships in '73, but, you know, hopefully this Knicks team. Hopefully that they figure things out in the future, because it's been a rough year for you, the Knicks fan. It's been tough, but you know, hopefully the new regime they got, you know, they figure it out. But I don't want to talk about 2 Knicks. I don't want to get depressed.
It's all good. It's all good.
I talk enough Knicks on all the other shows. So, yeah, man, this is a fun conversation, man.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Anytime I get to talk hoops, man, I'm always excited. I love it. Yeah, man. I'm, like I said, big fan of yours. Like I said, you know, the last show you did with Perk was really dope. It was a really dope show to listen to, and you do a great work. But before I let you go, I want to get your Mount Rushmore, who's the best players of all time. So what's that? Four people on Mount Rushmore.
Four.
Jordan, Jabbar, Bron, and then after that, it's like,
that's hard. The fourth one's always the hardest.
It's the hardest, because I use my wife's motto. We can't control when we were born. All we can ask is, did you dominate? So it's like, Russell has 11 rings. I don't care what era you play in. Like, that's absurd.
That's crazy.
Wilt, Akeem, man. I think we're gonna look back at KD and put him up there. Bird, Magic, Isaiah, man.
There's so many. How about this? Let's do point guards. Since you're a point guard, give me your 4 best point guards of all time.
I'll put Wilt on there for that 4th. I'll give it to Wilt for today. But the other 3, I'm definitely not changing. Jordan, LeBron, and Kareem. Point guards, Isaiah Thomas, Magic. I don't think he's a point guard per se. He's going to be remembered as one, but Steph. And then from there,
Yeah, Steph's more like a combo guard.
But
But
people, if I don't put him on there, he's going to
technically a point guard. It's like Allen Iverson. It's like AI. Like AI is tech.
But you know what? This is my list, so we're not going to put Steph on there. But again, if you're listening to this and you're just knowing who I am, go look at my work. I had Steph and Kawhi as the two best players coming into the league this year, and everybody laughed at me. So just so for perspective, I'm high on Steph. But no, Isaiah, Magic, Chris Paul.
Chris Paul, okay.
Then after that, it's like
it's tough.
It's tough. You could say Stockton, but I think Stockton, Malone, they played together. Gary Payton, Jason Kidd, but
Steve Nash.
But for me, I'm probably gonna say
Oscar.
I got to name 4. Probably Isaiah, Magic, Chris Paul, and Stockton. I'll do it like that. Stockton. And I have Isaiah over Magic, and I kind of just came to that conclusion this year that if Isaiah had, if you want to, and Isaiah even said this, he had less talent far as who Magic was really playing with. And again, Isaiah
Magic had literally the pick of the, he had
everybody. And Isaiah, as I stated, go look it up. He had a winning record against Magic. And if he didn't sprain his ankle, I know it's a lot of what ifs, they win the title that year. I don't care what nobody says. So then you're talking 3 titles, repeat. So for me, at his size, I got to go with Isaiah. So that's my Mount Rushmore. We'll say Isaiah, Magic, Stockton, and Chris Paul.
And who you think is the most underrated point guard of all time that doesn't get enough love?
I think it's a tie between like a Gary Payton and a Walt Frazier, who I grew up idolizing. Walt,
he's king here. He's king in New York.
Yeah, my dad stumbled across this VHS tape called The Golden Grace of Basketball. So it was like he had highlights on there: Earl Monroe, Bill Russell, Dr. J. So I love Walt Frazier. I just think he first kind of big guard, at that size. I know we talk about Oscar, but first kind of big guard, 3-and-D guy, could really defend, obviously. Big game in the finals, was always knocking down shots. He had like 37-19 that one night or whatever against the Lakers. So I think that's a guy that we don't talk enough about is Walt for sure. For sure. Yeah, definitely Walt.
They definitely don't talk about him enough. They think of the Willis Reed coming out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And Reed didn't really play that much that game. He hits the first shot, but that was
the first 2, and that was it.
That was Clyde Frazier game. He took over.
Yeah, that's the 37-19 game. So, yeah, for sure. And then if you're looking at that team, I mean, it's kind of an example. Like, that wasn't a superstar-laden team. I mean, they beat West, Baylor, and Chamberlain. 3 all-time greats. So, definitely as the point guard position, it'd be Walt Frazier. And then I just brought him up. Another player that doesn't get talked about to me is Elgin Baylor. The fact that they even assume that LeBron is a better Laker than him is absurd and insulting to me. Not because LeBron isn't great, but if you're talking about that franchise, there'd be no Lakers if it wasn't for Elgin. Because when they moved to Minnesota to LA, he saves that franchise. So if it wasn't, and he's the first athletic, big power forward we've ever seen. Like, he was the first one to kind of pick the ball up instead of dribbling like this. He's the first guy that kind of does that. So, I love the game. As you can tell, I'm a historian. So for me, I love these kind of conversations, man. I appreciate it.
No, man. This is, like I said, this is a really fun show. Like Zach, this was a pleasure to have you on. Like I said, to come on the show, talk hoops. I love doing that, and to get your expertise, knowing that you played a little pro ball and some high level college basketball. It's definitely a pleasure to have you on the show, and rooting for you big time with your show.
Thank you. You too. Likewise. Thank you.
I gotta get a hoodie. I'm gonna get on that because I tweeted you last week that hoodie was dope. So I definitely gotta get a hoodie from you. But where can people find your show? Where can people follow you on social media? Plug all your stuff.
Pretty simple. I do have a website, www.theofftheglasspodcast.com. So the link to my YouTube channel's there. My Patreon page is there. $5 a month if you want to support, subscribe. We appreciate it. As far as the merchandise, the links are on my Instagram and Twitter. So my Instagram is Zach the Off the Glass Podcast. Zach the Off the Glass Podcast. Click the link, hit the merchandise. And then for Twitter, it's Zach at the Off the Glass. I ran out of, they wouldn't let me put podcasts. You only get so many.
Yeah, I got off the
characters
ball
on
pod. I
Twitter.
couldn't put podcast.
Yeah, you couldn't get podcasts on there. So that's my Twitter. The link is there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Follow me there. Follow me there. I follow back. I engage. So thanks for having me again, Chris. Appreciate it.
No doubt. Yeah, you got to be engaging in this podcast world, so you get people to listen, man. I realized that real early because, like I said, I wasn't engaging and like tweeting and Instagram.
No, I ain't gonna lie. He's giving me a lot of jewels, but Rashad Phillips, that was the one. He was like, "You on Twitter?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You ain't." He's like, "No, man. Like you." So literally, it'd be nights I would stay up late, just tweeting with random people. That's how. And that's
I do that at work this morning. I do it this morning.
Yeah. That was the Gary V approach too, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to be engaging. We want to make it in this. We all want to get to a certain level in this podcast game, right?
Yep.
We got to be engaging with the fans and people who like listening to us, because that's the goal, man. We want to get to that next level. So let's definitely do this again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
To have you on the Facebook Lives that we do. I definitely love to have you a part of that, and chop it up with the rest of the guys at the Off the Ball Network. So I think that would be really fun to do. So
okay, sounds good. Let's do it.
Let's definitely do that. And like I said, man, this was a super fun show to do. Like I said, happy to have you on the show. And like I said, we're definitely gonna do this again. So guys, I'll make sure to put all Zach's links to his shows and his social media in the description when I get the show up. And make sure everyone be safe. Zach, you be safe.
You too.
Take care and all that, and have a good night, guys.